من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: وجعلناهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا وأوحينا إليهم فعل الخيرات وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وكانوا لنا عابدون. صلوات عليك. The ayat that I recited is from Surah Anbiya, Surah number 21, ayat 1773. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing the aspect of imamat. Again, He emphasizes that this is a position where I appoint imams. And He uses the word ja'alna, وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً, and we made them into guides and imams. يَحْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. What was their mission? They guide people according to our command. And then Allah, highlighting some of the important aspects of their character, He says, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ, and we inspired to these imams that we have appointed فِعْلُ الْخَيْرَاتِ, number one, to do good deeds, وَإِقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ, number two, to establish prayers, وَإِيتَاءِ الزَّكَاةِ, and to give in charity, وَكَانُوا لَنَا عَابِدُونَ, and they were indeed servants of us. When we look at this issue, we see that, one of the important elements of imamat is to be concerned for the welfare of the people. And when we look at the personality of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam, for whose shahadat we have gathered tonight to commemorate that, our Imam exemplifies this ayat. He indeed was an Imam who had the welfare of the community at his heart. Even when he signed the peace treaty with Muawiyah, if you look at the conditions that he put in, you will see that one of the important things he talks about is that he says, he refers to one of the fertile region of the Muslim empire of that time, Abjar. He says, one of the conditions of the treaty is that you will reserve 1 million dirham from the revenue which comes every year from there to be dedicated for the families of the soldiers of Ali who were killed in Jamal and Siffin. So this is a specific fund dedicated for the widows and the orphans who lost their head of the family in the battle of Jamal and Siffin. And this itself shows that Imam, he's talking about Jamal and Siffin, which is not during his time of imamat, but he is concerned about the well-being of the widows and the orphans of those two battles. And this is, one of the aspects which is very well known, that Imam was a very generous person. Unfortunately, what we see in history, that when the enemies come to power, they use whatever tools which were available to them to tarnish the image of the Imam, and even to defame the character of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. Portraying the grandson of the Prophet, of somebody who was more concerned with the pleasures of this dunya. And when we look at that, that kind of propaganda has continued till our time. Means if we look at some of the fringe books, of history, we can say, well, these things are remnants of the Umayyad time. But even if you look at some of the serious work done by Orientalists about the Muslim history, whenever they talk about Imam Hasan alayhi salam, they actually use this term, that he was more concerned with enjoying his life after the peace treaty was signed. Not concerned with the community at all. And our people, and our children read these things in Islamic encyclopedias, in our writings. I was, in a way, it was a good thing that at least this child brought this question forward in a question-answer session in the first Ashara that I was in New York. The moderator, said that there is a question from the youngest member of the audience there, a boy on early teens. And when the mic was given to him, he said, can you explain to me why is Imam Hasan known in history as the great divorcer? Mitlaq. Great divorcer means somebody who used to divorce his wives frequently. And this has become kind of an attribute of the Imam in the books of history. And when you look at it, this is where you come to realize that, sometimes we really need to look at it, because when falsehood is repeated again and again and again, many times, even Muslims themselves might start thinking that, well, maybe this is true, but then now we have to understand how to explain it. I have a difficulty here. I see young children also. But it's an example which is very common. People hear it quite a lot. That these suicide bombers go around because they are told in the Quran, this is where, the crux of the matter comes in, that Quran says if they go and explode themselves or kill others, when they go into the paradise, they will have 70, what? Houris, if I put it more decently. And when it's repeated again and again and again, they ask some people, say, okay, let's try to explain why. Maybe that ayat doesn't apply to the suicide bombers. It applies to a good doer. The fact of the matter is, go and do the word search of number 70 in the Quran, and yes, it has been repeated 2 or 3 times, but it has nothing to do with the Huris in Jannah, nothing to do with the reward of the Akhirah. That is not there at all in the Quran. And so when we look at this issue of, our Imam, that whether he was, really a mitlaq, a great divorcer or not, let us look at the fact first. And we'll find out that this is actually not even close to the character of the Imam, as far as this label given to him as somebody who was frequently marrying women and then frequently changing them by giving divorce, and therefore he was known as the great divorcer. Salawat pradhane ekbar aur. Imam Hasan al-Mashtaba is actually a mazloom in more than one meaning of that. Many of our Imams were target of propaganda, but mostly during their own time, and that continued later on. In case of Imam Hasan, he is mazloom and he is targeted many, many decades after his passing away. The first person who actually started this labeling game against Imam Hasan was Mansur Dawaniqi, the second Abbasid Khalifa. Abbasid era started in the year 132 after the Hijrah. Imam was dead long time ago. And so the question comes up, what was this khannas in the heart of Mansur, that now he is tarnishing the image of Imam Hasan al-Mashtaba, who passed away long time ago. And this is where we need to go back to history. Because Imam, his shahadat happened in the year 51 of the Hijrah. Mansur and others came to power after 132 after Hijrah. You see, you have to go back to history now. After the events of Karbala, the anti-Umayyad sentiments of the people became more visible and open. And people had more sympathy towards Ali and Ali because of the massacre of Karbala. And Banu Abbas, the descendants of Abdullah ibn Abbas, they decided to, start a anti-Umayyad campaign a revolutionary movement to overthrow the Banu Umayyah. And in order to do that, they exploited the Alawi sentiments of the people. That people are now into this mood of taking revenge for what happened in Karbala. So even the slogans that they came up were related to Karbala. Litharat al-Hussein. We are doing this to avenge the blood of Hussein. Or for example, they would say, we are fighting لِلرِّضَى مِنْ Ali Muhammad. For somebody who would be accepted by Ali Muhammad. So the whole focus was on Ali and Ali Muhammad. But in order to, succeed in their plan, they needed support from the descendants of Ali and Fatima. And this is where we see that if you don't have the wisdom, you can be used up by others. When you look at the children of Ali and Fatima, salawatullah alayhim ajma'een, they descend from Hasan and Hussein. So you have a Hassani line and you have a Husseini line. From Imam Hussein we have Imam Zayn al-Abidin, then Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, then Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. From Imam Hasan you have Hasan al-Musanna, and then his son Abdullah, and then his great-grandson Muhammad Nafs Zakiyah. Muhammad Nafs Zakiyah, a great-grandson of Hasan al-Mujtaba, and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, the great-grandson of Imam Hussein. They are contemporary, of the same generation, same era. Banu Abbas tried to get support from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam for their campaign against Banu Umayyah. And Imam said no. He even met with his own Ali family, extended family, and he said, I don't trust the motivations of Abbasids. They are using our name, the name of our family, but they have their own plans. And I don't want to be part of it. Very similar to the situation, just to give you an idea of how things happen. Removing Saddam. Why did America do that? To help the Shias of Iraq? Or to go after the weapons of mass destruction? No. There were no weapons there. Of course, they went through the process of weapons of mass deception. Deceive the whole world. There was nothing there. They talked about democracy, they talked about this and that, they talked about zulm of Saddam, but they were with Saddam all the time. So, their motivations was something else, but the pretext is something else. Banu Abbas now are saying, we are fighting to, take revenge of Karbala. We want somebody from Ali to come to power. They were actually exploiting the sentiments of the people. And this is where Imam Ja'far Sadiq said, we should not support them. Unfortunately, Muhammad Nafs Zakiyah, the great-grandson of Imam Hasan, somehow he got carried away with this idea. He said, no, we will support them. And even his father, who was alive, Abdullah, said, no, we will support them. And Imam Ja'far Sadiq said that, you are like an uncle to me. And I don't think this is a good thing. Your son will end up losing his life. Where Abdullah bin Hasan al-Musanna then accused our sixth Imam that maybe you are jealous. And so there were problems there. And eventually what happened was Banu Abbas, Mansur and Saffah, they basically then used Muhammad Nafs Zakiyah. He came on board with that campaign against Banu Umayyah. But what happened at the end? They were able to overthrow Banu Umayyah. But when the time came to bring Ar-Ridha min Ali Muhammad to the seat of Khilafat, no, Saffah was made the Caliph. And when he died after 3-4 years, Mansur Dawaniqi, the main founder of the Abbasid dynasty, came to power. And these both individuals, Saffah and Mansur, had done bay'at to Muhammad Nafs Zakiyah during the revolutionary movement, that if we succeed, you will become the Khalifa. But when the power came to in their hands, what Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq had said was indeed sidq. They were looking for their own, interest. They were exploiting the name of Ali. And so Muhammad Nafs Zakiyah became very angry, rebelled against Mansur, and eventually he was killed with his companions and lost his life in that process. Now Mansur, sitting there on the seat of Khilafat, considered Ali in general, and especially the descendants of Imam Hasan in particular, as a matter of threat for his Khilafat. And that's where we see that he goes even to Medina, rounds up all the descendants of Imam Hasan, arrested them and sent them to Baghdad. And that is why you will see it's the same time frame where the descendants of Imam Hasan now are fleeing away from the central lands of the Muslim empire. They end up in North Africa and in Yemen. When you hear about this king of Morocco, and you'll be told he is descendant of Imam Hasan, yes, he is. Because these were the Hassani Sadat forced by the Abbasid situation to run away from Medina and Hijaz and Iraq. And they ended up in North Africa, established their own kingdom. And so this is what he did with the descendants of Imam Hasan. But then he still had to justify his Khilafat, because he had done bay'at to Muhammad Nafs Zakiyah that you will be the Khalifa. So in order to deal with that problem of legitimacy, now he is trying to attack the root of the family. And this is where now he goes back to Imam Hasan alayhi salam. And he says, if I can, tarnish his image and portray him as somebody not worthy of Khilafat, then I don't have to deal with his descendants. And that's where in one of the first lectures or address that he gave, he says, and these are his own words, where he says, by Allah, we left the descendants of Abu Talib with the matter of Khilafat. They can do whatever with it. And then Ali bin Abi Talib became the Khalifa. And he's saying we are also descendants of Abbas, one of the other uncles of the Prophet, but we were not interested in Khilafat. Then he says, after Ali, Hassan bin Ali became Khalifa. By Allah, these are his words. He says, by Allah, Hassan did not deserve it. He was offered money, which he accepted. Muawiyah sent him a message that he would make him his successor. So Hassan abdicated the Khilafat and left the government and power. If he had stopped here, I would say, okay, this is politics. But now it becomes very personal. He says he left everything to Muawiyah and turned his attention to women, marrying one woman today, divorcing another tomorrow. He remained like this till he died in his bed. So this is the beginning of this false propaganda against the character of the grandson of the Prophet, Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. Now Mansur just uttered these words. That, descendants of Hassan, what are you claiming Khilafat for? Your ancestor Hassan sold it to Muawiyah. And he was busy, paying attention to women, marrying one day and divorcing the next day. Now this is where the big boss makes the statement, and then all the chamchas in the pay of the government, the writers, the historians, the narrators of hadith come into work. And then they start fabricating stories and numbers about this statement and the character of Imam Hasan. What we see, those who came later on, trying to build up on that story about the life of Imam Hasan, they end up giving numbers. How many wives he had when he died? Or how many wives he had married and divorced? The minimum number that we get is 70. And then it goes up. Then 90. Then you go to 250. And then you go to the maximum number is 300. And so they basically would like to say that Imam Hasan has no concern with the affairs of the Ummah. Once the government was taken over by Muawiyah gave him money, he said, enjoy your life. And so now the descendants of Imam Hasan have no right to claim anything in the Khilafat. We fought for it, it is our right. And this is where it started during the days of Mansur, but there, the one who becomes Mazloom is Imam Hasan Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. Not only that, in adding stories to this whole issue, they went on to say that even his father Ali was embarrassed with his behavior. They say in Kufa one day he went on the minbar and he said to the people of Kufa, "O people of Kufa, please don't give your daughters to my son Hasan." Because he is becoming a habitual divorcer. And to make it sugar-coated, this is where we have to be careful. These narrations are not just fabricated like that. Sometimes, sugar is put in it so that we can probably swallow it. When Imam, allegedly announced this on the minbar in Kufa, that, "Oh people, don't give your daughters to my son," one of the chiefs of the tribe of Hamdan from Yemen stood up. He said, "O Amir al-Mu'mineen, by Allah will give him. He is the Prophet's grandson. We feel honored to be related to him. It is up to him. Whomever he wants to retain, he can retain. Whomever he wants to divorce, he can divorce." And so Ali became so delighted when he heard that. He said, "If Allah makes me the gatekeeper of Jannah, I will say, O tribe of Hamdan, udkhuluhu bisalam." Just enter in free. So they put this sugar coating, into it so that when we read about it, we say, "Oh yeah, it's a very good thing about Imam Ali." But no, this is all to tarnish the image of Imam Hasan Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. One of the historians goes to the extent of saying that, Hasan often would marry 4 women in one sitting, and then one day he will divorce 4 together in one sitting. And this has also come into the Western encyclopedias of Islam, history of Islam, and even the writings of the Western scholars. So let us look at it. Because you might face that statement just like this young man in New York. That how do you explain the statement that Hasan was the great divorcer? What does it mean, and is it true or not? Let us look at the facts. And even practical possibility whether Imam could have married so many times or not. We know, number one, all these allegations against Imam Hasan's character, that he was a womanizer, na'uzubillah, he used to frequently divorce his wives. All of them are saying this is something which started after Imam Ali came to Kufa. So nobody relates that to the life of the second Imam before Kufa. It's only Kufa till his shahadat. Amir al-Mu'minin came to Kufa in the year 37 of the Hijrah. And at that time in Kufa, Imam Hasan had 3 wives. The first one was Khawla Fazariya, the mother of Hasan Musanna, who is from whom these descendants of Imam Hasan have continued. She was married to Imam Hasan in Medina, and she remained married to him till his shahadat. She survived him. The second is Ishaq, and she was also married to Imam Hasan in Medina, and she was with him till the last day of his life. She survived him. The third one is Ju'da bint Ash'as, the one who was responsible for the shahadat of Imam Hasan. He married her in Kufa, but she also remained with him till the end. She is the one who gave him the poison. So he has 3 wives who were with him all the time, till the time of his shahadat. How many wives can a Muslim man have at one time? Huh? Are you sure? 4. And this is a law which applies to everyone. The only exception was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So keep this historical fact in mind that when Imam Hasan, from the time he was in Kufa till the time of his shahadat, he had 3 wives already. So the men who have 4 slots, you have only 1, 3 are 3 empty. So you still have the possibilities of filling the 3 more slots. In the case of Imam, he had 3 wives already. So the only possibility of marrying now is for 1 wife. And so this whole issue of saying, he used to marry 4 wives at one go and divorce 4 wives doesn't make sense at all, when he had 3 wives with him all the time. Number 2, even if you look at the possibility that while he was using this option of the 4th wife, he could still have, and using that 1/4 slot to exchange wives, have new ones all the time, look at the possibility. In the Sharia, if you marry, and then you want to give divorce, you still have to go through 1 month's process before the divorce can be pronounced. After the divorce is pronounced, for 3 months, that woman would be in iddah, waiting period. During the time of the iddah, that woman is still considered to be the wife. So Imam Hasan already had 3 wives. There is only possibility of 1 more. Suppose he married one, then didn't like her, and then gave her talaq. He could not marry another in place of that 4th one till after 4 months. 3 months iddah and 1 month before that. So in 1 year, he can use that 4th slot only 3 times. Not more than that, as far as the Sharia laws are concerned. I hope I'm not giving ideas to people here. Okay? You look at the life of the Imam. From year 37, when Imam is in Kufa, till his shahadat in the year 51. You have 14 years. In 14 years, let's say he was not doing nothing, not even letting one day go by. And he uses that. 3 wives in 1 year, multiplied by 14, the maximum wives that he could have was 42. 42 plus 3 he has all the time anyway. So 45. This was the possibility as far as the laws of Islam are concerned. What is the minimum number we see of the wives of the Imam in history? 70. 70 is the minimum, then you go to 90, then 250, and then 300. Just if you look at the laws of Islam, it was impossible for Imam to have so many wives and divorce them so many times. Salawat. This is where we see how, history plays its own game. People don't go into details. They'll say, it says, so many narrators are there. He was mutlaq, a great divorcer. This was his pursuit of life after signing peace treaty with Muawiyah. This is all propaganda. It all goes back to this mal'oon known as Mansur Dawaniqi. He's the one, in order to justify his own khilafat against the descendants of Imam Hasan, he is targeting the character and the life of the grandson of the Prophet, who is known as Sayyid al-Shabab al-Jannah, al-Imam Hasan al-Mushtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. And just think about even the statement that Imam Ali went on the minbar and said to the people, people, don't give your daughters to my son. This is even bringing down the image of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why would he go on the minbar and talk about this about his son, he should actually talk to his own son privately at home, that what you are doing is wrong. Instead of that, goes on the mimbar and says it publicly. It doesn't make sense at all. And this is again an attempt to bring down the image of Amir al-Mu'minin also, along with the image of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wa salam. Salawat alayhi. Imam was not somebody who was tied to the pleasures of this dunya. In one of the last conversations, this is 3 days between the time he was given the poison and the day of shahadat. One of the Sahabi by the name of Junada, he used to visit the Imam, and there one of the last advice that the Imam gives to him is about the issue of dunya itself, the world. And there he says something. He says, treat this dunya as a mayta. Mayta means the dead body of an animal. Even if it's of a halal animal, you can't eat it if it died by itself. But in the Quran you will see there is an ayat where Allah says, mayta is haram for you, illa man isturra. The ayat goes on to say, except somebody who is compelled by circumstances. If his own life depends on eating that haram, he's allowed to eat. And so Imam says to Junada that treat this dunya, although it's halal for you, but treat it like mayta. Means only use it as far as your survival is concerned. Don't indulge into it that much. Even in his own personal life, when it came to the wealth of this dunya, Imam is known for his charity. Not only by helping from the Baytul Mal, or putting this condition in the peace treaty that the revenue of 1,000,000 dirham from Anbar be used for the widows and the orphans. No, even from what he had, that he had inherited from his father. And that's another long story. How did they got things from Amir al-Mu'minin? How did he generate, wealth for his own family? But we see that Imam not only used his own money, he would even encourage others to give in charity. There's a very beautiful story where we see that one day he saw, passing by a garden, one of these orchards in Medina, and there was a black slave. Probably he worked in that garden, and at that time it was his meal time, so he was sitting on the floor eating. And there was a stray dog which had come close by, so this slave would eat one morsel himself and then throw a piece of food to the dog. And Imam liked it. Imam liked his sense of charity, even when it came to an animal. So Imam asked him, why you are doing this? That you are taking one morsel for yourself and then giving something to this dog. And he said, I feel ashamed sitting here alone eating while this hungry dog is looking at me. And therefore I would like to share what I have with this dog. And Imam was so much pleased with his explanation also, and his character, his charity, that Imam said, stay here, don't move. He goes and looks for the owner of this garden. And he says, I would like to make a deal with you. I would like to buy this garden as well as buy the slave that you have. And then he finalized the deal with him. Then he comes back and he says to that man that I have bought you and I'm making you free now, and this garden belongs to you now. Salawat. Just a simple act of charity towards the dog elicits that kind of feeling in the heart of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. He's not only doing good deed, he's promoting the sense of charity. And this was the jaza that Imam gave to this person in this dunya. That you were a slave before it, you became free. Not only that, you became a free man with a property in form of the garden that you are working for somebody. Now it is your own property. And so when we look at this perspective, we have to realize that Imam, did his own things in his own ways, as far as the issue of taking care of the welfare of the people is concerned. Salawat. One of the things that we mentioned probably on the 15th of Ramadan also was that Imam, part of his example of charity was that in his own lifetime, 3 times we are told, a time came when he put everything that belonged to him in this dunya in one place and divided it into 2. And he gave 1/2 of it away in charity and kept the other half for himself. In Ramadan I had mentioned those days, there was this whole news about these millionaires and billionaires around the world being encouraged by Bill Gates to give away whatever they had, or half of it, or a portion of it, for charitable cause that they think is best in their will or after they die. We don't really have to go here and there for examples. Look at our own history. We have the Imam 3 times in his life, whatever he possessed in his time, divided into half and half, gave half away in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and kept the other half for himself. Salawat. I wasn't here in Muharram, but I've been hearing about this campaign of changing this musalla into masjid. And as far as, getting free from this debt situation that we have as far as the musalla al-Ghadir is concerned, probably in the spirit of this charity of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, think about it. I'm not asking you to divide everything half and half, unless I do it myself first. And I don't think that's going to relieve the debt anyway. But I'm sure there are people in the community. If they really do that, use the example of Imam Hasan, we can get free from the debt very, very fast. Salawat. But we don't need to burden 1 or 2 person. I think collectively as a community, if we get together, whatever we can, inshallah, we should be able to overcome this hurdle that we have before this becomes Masjid al-Ghadir, so we can maximize the sawab of doing namaz in a masjid itself. Salawat. इमाम हसन मुश्तबा अलैहिस्सलाम के इस शहादत की मजलिस में इमाम की शख्सियत पर जो हमला मजदूर मुअर्रिखीन ने किया है, हम समझते थे ये बातें जो हैं इधर उधर रहती हैं, दुश्मनों के किताबों में है। लेकिन जब हमने न्यूयॉर्क में खुद अपने मजमे में एक जवान की ज़बान से इस सवाल जब सुना, तो ये बात फिक्रमंद है और इसमें हमें वाकई मेहनत करनी चाहिए कि कम से कम इस टाइप के जो एंटी शिया प्रोपेगेंडा है, इसका जवाब हम दे सकें। आप अगर फैक्ट्स के लिहाज से देखें तो ये इल्ज़ाम बिल्कुल बेबुनियाद है। इमाम हसन मुश्तबा अलैहिस्सलाम हमारे लिए मासूम हैं। वो हमारे लिए उनकी सीरत और उनकी मिसाल हुस्न, ये हमारे लिए दर हकीकत उसवे हसना है। और इस टाइप की बातें करना कि वो मितलाक थे, ग्रेट डिवोर्सड थे, एक दिन शादी करते थे, दूसरे दिन तलाक दे देते थे, ये सब बातें जो हैं बिल्कुल बेबुनियाद हैं। इमाम की जहाँ तक पर्सनल लाइफ की बात है, उनके खैरात और सदक़ात का सिलसिला है, कौम के साथ और मिल्लत के साथ और उम्मत के साथ जो हमदर्दी का जज्बा है, उस सिलसिले में सिर्फ एक और फ़िक्रा जो जुनादा ने जो हदीस कोट की है, जो इमाम ने زہر پینے کے بعد اور شہادت کے درمیان پیش کیا تھا، اس کے ایک جملے کو اپنے لیے اور آپ کے لیے نصیحت کے طور پہ ہم پیش کرنا چاہیں گے۔ امام کہتے ہیں جنادہ سے، اعلم ان الدنیا فی حلالها حساب وفی حرامها عقاب وفی الشبہات عتاب۔ امام نے بیسیکلی 3 باتیں یہاں پہ کی ہیں کہ جہاں تک اس دنیا کا تعلق ہے، فی حلالها، جو روزی ہم حاصل کرتے ہیں حلال طریقے سے، فی حلالها حساب، اگر حلال سورس سے بھی آئی ہے تو قیامت کے دن ہمیں حساب دینا ہوگا کہ کس طرح سے آئی ہے۔ وفی حرامها عقاب، اور اگر یہ دنیاوی چیزیں ہمارے پاس حرام سورس سے آئی ہیں، حرام طریقے سے آئی ہیں، تو اس میں عقاب اور عذاب ہے۔ وفی الشبہات عتاب، شبہات یعنی اگر ایسے سورس سے آئی ہے جو گرے ایریا میں ہے یا ناٹ شیور یا مکس ہے حلال و حرام، اس میں بھی عتاب ہے۔ عتاب سے مراد وہاں بھی اللہ میاں جو ہے تنبیہ ضرور کرے گا، شاید عقاب نہ ہو لیکن عتاب تنبیہ ضرور ہونے والی ہے۔ تو لہٰذا انسان جو ہے اسی کے بعد امام کہتے ہیں کہ دنیا کو جو ہے میتا سمجھو، مردار سمجھو، اپنی بقا کے لیے، سروائیول کے لیے یوز کرو، اور اگر اس سے زیادہ ضرورت نہ ہو تو اس میں پڑو نہیں، اس لیے کہ حلال میں حساب ہے، حرام میں عقاب ہے، اور شبہات میں بھی خداوند عالم ہمیں ہماری تنبیہ کرے گا۔ جو امام آخری وقت میں بھی اس ٹائپ کی نصیحت کرے وہ اپنی عملی زندگی میں کتنا پاک و پاکیزہ ہوگا۔ سوچ لیں آپ، اکثر کہا جاتا ہے کہ آخری وصیتیں جو ہیں حق پر، حقیقت کی بنیاد پر ہوتی ہیں۔ یہ تو امام معصوم تھے یہ، اور امام نے اپنے اس پورے زندگی میں جو بسر کی ہے اس کی مثال ابھی بھی آپ دیکھ لیں۔ خداوند عالم نے ان کی نسل میں جو بزرگ علماء پیدا کیے ہیں، یہ جو طبائی خاندان ہیں مثلا، یہ سب حسنی سادات میں سے ہیں۔ صدیاں گزر گئی ہیں لیکن وہ خون کا اثر جو ہے، بہرحال محمد حنفیہ کا معاملہ ہے لیکن بہت سے ایسے بھی ہیں کہ جن میں وہ خون کا اثر ظاہر ہے ابھی تک، صدیوں کے گزرنے کے بعد بھی۔ اور یہ امام یقیناً مظلوم تھے کہ شہادت کے بعد بھی ان کے شخصیت پر حملہ کیا گیا، اور حملہ کرنے والا بھی وہی ملعون ہے کہ جس نے دیکھا تھا کہ صلح نامے پر دستخط تو کر لی تھی لیکن کنڈیشنز امام نے اس طرح سے لکھی تھی کہ وہ اپنے پلان میں ٹوٹلی فیل ہو گیا۔ وہ ایک ڈائنسٹی بنانا چاہ رہا تھا لیکن اس میں اس کو لیجیٹیمیسی نہیں ملی، یزید کے جانشین بننے کا کوئی جواز نہیں تھا، اس لیے کہ امام نے کنڈیشنز بڑی سخت کر دی تھی، اور اسی لیے وہ معاویہ چاہ رہا تھا کہ امام حسن کو اپنی زندگی سے، اپنے راہ میں، مقصد میں ایک رکاوٹ سمجھ رہا تھا، اور اس نے کئی بار کوشش کی۔ آخر میں جودہ بنت اشعث کے ذریعے کامیابی حاصل ہوتی ہے۔ گرمی کا موسم تھا روایات کے لحاظ سے، اور امام نے اس دن روزہ رکھا تھا، اور جب افطار کا وقت آتا ہے، گرمی کا زمانہ ہوتا ہے، تو سب سے پہلے انسان کی طلب یہی ہوتی ہے کہ پانی پیے، اور اگر گھر میں ہے تو گھر والی سے نہیں مانگے گا تو کس سے مانگے گا؟ اور یہی بات ہے کہ اسی رشتے کے تقدس کو اس عورت نے نہیں رکھا۔ وہ لے کے تو آتی ہے شربت، امام نے مانگا تھا پانی، دیا ہے اس نے شربت، لیکن یہ شربت صرف شربت نہیں تھا، یہ وہ شربت تھا جس میں زہر ملا ہوا تھا، اور جیسے امام نے پیا ہے، امام کو فوراً احساس ہو گیا۔ اس کاسے کو واپس دیتے ہوئے کہتے ہیں جو تمہارا مقصد تھا زہر دینے میں، اس میں تم کامیاب ہو، لیکن جو تمہاری نیت تھی اس میں تمہیں کامیابی حاصل نہیں ہوگی۔ اور امام کی طبیعت خراب شروع ہو جاتی ہے۔ 3 دن تک یہی کیفیت رہی۔ جب جناب زینب کو معلوم ہوا کہ بھائی بیمار ہیں، جناب زینب آتی ہیں اپنے بھائی کی عیادت کے لیے، اور دیکھتی ہیں کہ وہ کیفیت ہے کہ امام جو ہے بار بار قے کر رہے ہیں۔ جس تشت کو لایا گیا تھا، خود امام کی روایت ہے، جہاں جنادہ سے بھی کہا تھا کہ جب قے کرتے ہیں لگتا ہے ہمارے جگر کے ٹکڑے بھی اس کے ساتھ نکل کے اس تشت میں آ رہے ہیں. مجھے معلوم نہیں ہے، عام طور سے تیمارداری کے لیے اگر بہن ہو تو یہ تیمارداری بہت کرتی ہے، لیکن اسے صدمہ بھی بہت ہوتا ہے. زینب نے کس طرح سے اس منظر کو دیکھا ہے اور برداشت کیا ہے، یہ وہی ہیں جنہوں نے کربلا کے اس منظر کو بھی دیکھا ہے. آخر میں وہ وقت آتا ہے کہ جس دن امام کی وفات واقع ہوتی ہے، امام حسن کہتے ہیں اپنے بھائی سے کہ میرے بستر کو اٹھا کے صحن میں رکھا جائے، ہم چاہ رہے ہیں کہ آسمان کا نظارہ کر سکے. اور اس پر لیٹنے کے بعد جب تھوڑی دیر کے بعد وصیتیں شروع کرتے ہیں، امام حسین سے کہتے ہیں دیکھو میری تمنا یہی ہے کہ میرے نانا کے پہلو میں دفن کیا جائے، لیکن مجھے معلوم ہے یہ شرارت کریں گے اور مانے ہوں گے، اور اگر یہ بات جنگ تک چلے تو میرا حکم ہے، میری وصیت ہے، مجھے وہاں دفن نہ کیا جائے بلکہ جنت البقیع میں جا کے دفن کر دینا. عزاداران حسین وہ وقت بھی آتا ہے، امام حسن مجتبی علیہ السلام کی روح جو ہے جسم سے جدا ہو جاتی ہے. ایک مرتبہ جب یہ آواز اعلان ہوئی ہے، زینب نے واہ محمد واہ علی اور واہ فاطمہ کے نعرہ شروع کر دیا، اور یہی بیان تھا کہ آج کا دن وہ دن ہے کہ میرے نانا اس دنیا میں نہ رہے. یہ ویسے ہی ہے جس سے علی گزر چکے ہیں، یہ وہ دن ہے جس طرح سے فاطمہ گزر چکی تھی. عزاداران حسین یہ جنازہ اٹھا ہے، احترام کے ساتھ چلے ہیں. روزے رسول کے جب قریب پہنچے ہیں، آل مروان و آل عثمان یہ آتے ہیں اور عائشہ کو اپنے ساتھ لے کے آتے ہیں اور روکنے کی کوشش کرتے ہیں. کس کو؟ جو نواس رسول ہے، جو سید شباب اہل الجنہ ہے، جن کو رسول نے ہمیشہ محبت و پیار سے ان کے ساتھ سلوک کیا تھا. یہاں تک کہ جب بنو ہاشم کے جوانوں نے بھی اپنی تلوار نکالنا شروع کی ہے، اس وقت امام حسین ان کے سامنے آتے ہیں اور انہیں روکتے ہیں یہ کہتے ہوئے اے بنو ہاشم کے جوان، بھائی کی وصیت تھی اپنے تلواروں کو نیام میں رکھ دو. پھر آل مروان سے کہا تھا میرے ہاتھ بھائی کی وصیت کی وجہ سے بند ہو چکے ہیں، ورنہ تلوار کے سہارے ہم اپنے بھائی کو نانا کے پہلو میں دفن کرتے. اس کے بعد پھر یہ جنازہ چلا، جنت البقیع میں جا کے دفن کر دیا گیا ہے. آل حسن کی خدمت میں صرف اتنا کہیں گے، حسین زندہ تھے، حسین نے صرف اتنا کہا تھا کہ بھائی کی وصیت نے ہاتھ کو بند کر دیا ہے، لیکن ہائے مجھے ایک اور ہاتھ نظر آتے ہیں. ایک کربلا میں عابد بیمار کے ہاتھ جو توقوں میں اور زنجیر میں بدے ہوئے تھے. یہاں تو کم سے کم امام حسن کا جنازہ دفن ہو چکا، لیکن ہائے عابد بیمار یہی کہتے رہے کہ ہم جوان بھی ہیں اور زندہ بھی ہیں، لیکن بابا کے لاشے کو کربلا بے گور و کفن چھوڑ کے جا رہے ہیں. ماتم حسین.